and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting over episode 17 of Cowboy Bebop. If you would like to watch along, start watching now. Alright, now, if memory serves, this episode was shaping up to be a rather Ed-centric episode. Looks like things are business as usual on board the Bebop, which is to say they have no food. So it seems like even the emergency rations have been pilfered. There is contention amongst the crew of the Bebop. So they're truly in a dire state. They have no fuel, they have no food. They're bound for Europa, but they're only drifting there based on their inertia. So in the end, the single solitary peanut they had was eaten by Ein. Such is life. So the crew of the Bebop was the victim of a hit and run. So by virtue of colliding with that other ship, they've been knocked off course and they've landed on whatever planet this is. Just judging by the terrain, it looks like a backwater planet or moon or whatever. Seems like it's a pretty far cry from Europa, which way they were hoping to drift to. So Faye cunningly gets out of out of food gathering duty. So Spike and Jet are initially trying to get rid of Ed so Ed can't muck everything up, but yeah, I'm not sure if sending Ed to get food is really the best course of action, anyways. So Ed and I just sort of start wandering around. There's really not much on this planet to speak of. It's mostly just an open expanse of desert. So this, it seems to me, is where the plot starts. So this woman who showed up in the flashy car is apparently hunting a bounty of sorts. Curiously, both Ed and Nine have disappeared. So now we're in the town the melon vendor was mentioning. There's a guy in what looks to be a cheap looking suit dragging a coffin around. So the woman in the flashy car and the police she encountered are both searching for the same mushroom dealer. Inadvertently, Ed and Nine have gotten the woman in trouble. And just to rub salt in the wound, they really seem unaware of the trouble they've caused and they're just going along their merry way. So Ed encounters Domino, the mushroom dealer, and also detains him long enough for the man in the cheap suit to catch up. It turns out that he has a bone to pick with him as well. Alright, so this is where things get really interesting. The mushroom dealer dropped some of his mushrooms. Ein ate a mushroom and is now tripping heavily. So I guess this is where the title Mushroom Samba comes in. Now, this is where things get really interesting. Faye seems to not have learned her lesson, and there's a mushroom sitting around, and she eats it. She didn't learn her lesson last time from having eaten the expired emergency rations. It seems like Jet didn't learn the lesson that Faye should have learned either, because he too is eating a mushroom. And the interesting bit is that Ed seems to be setting everybody up here and just observing to see what the mushrooms do to people. Even Spike is not immune to the temptation of the mushroom. And just like that, everybody starts tripping hard. I think animation is really one of the art forms that can truly represent hallucinatory drugs the best. Because here, from Spike's perspective, there's an endless staircase, and he's just walking up and up and up, and he's getting nowhere closer to the top. Meanwhile, Faye's just sort of checking out in the bathroom. Chet, on the other hand, suddenly finds everything hilarious. So while Spike is walking up this stairway to heaven, as the hallucinatory frog called it, Ed's just watching him and he's really just shifting from foot to foot on the same step of the staircase. Meanwhile, Faye hallucinates being underwater with a bunch of fish, and Jet's learning the secrets of the universe from his bonsai trees. So by this point, Ed is in the awkward position of being the most lucid member of the crew. So Ed now knows, having watched Roundup, I believe it's called, that the man she met earlier, Domino Walker, is a wanted man and there's a bounty out on his head. Unfortunately, Ed is really the only person who's in any state to try and capture a bounty, which isn't saying a whole lot. Alright, so this lady cowboy, she obviously feels the need to get back out on the hunt. She's not too keen about having been arrested for Ed stowing away in her car. Meanwhile, the gentleman in the cheap suit also sees Ed and realizes that something must be up. Of course, Ed has prompted everybody to get up and go, but Ed doesn't really have a good idea of where Domino Walker is. Granted, she may have accidentally stumbled across the hit and run ship, but that was mere happenstance rather than actual skill. So Ed's clearly having a lot more fun with this than perhaps any other member of the Bebop crew would. Uh, it's refreshing. Cowboy Bebop is usually, if not somber, pretty serious. But this whole episode, it's just got a whimsy to it. It almost reminds me a little bit of Fooly Cooly. So here we have a nice variation on like a classic chase scene between a car and a train. So it's three different parties, both chasing after the same bounty. They've got all kinds of ordnance. It doesn't seem like they have any compunctions about injuring each other. Although, notably, it seems to me that they'll have slightly different reasons for pursuing Domino Walker. The woman seems like she's in for it the money. The man in the cheap suit seems like he's in it for revenge. And honestly, it seems like Ed is in it for fun more than anything else. So Domino's trying to appeal to Ed, but he's really barking up the wrong tree. Ed doesn't really seem to care much. So everybody's slowly sort of lapsing out of their mushroom trip. And they all sort of find themselves in a weird state. So ultimately, it seems like the mushrooms that Ed scored off of Domino appear to be ordinary shiitake mushrooms rather than the valuable hallucinogens. So, on the bright side, the crew has food to eat. Unfortunately, it's all mushrooms. And none of them seem super keen on the mushrooms. And quite frankly, I can't blame them. You know, mushrooms they're all right on pizza or with something, but I don't think I'd ever eat them by themselves. All right. So next episode, if I recall, this is sort of like a Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of deal, but they're looking for like an ancient, ancient in terms of Cowboy Bebop VCR player. All right, well, that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, stick around for the next one.